How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. I'm delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you would like to be on the program, I am very happy to have you. A quick look at the markets for everybody. It looks like, let's see, while they refresh, the Dow is now making up from yesterday. It's up 603 points, NASDAQ up 353, and the S&P 500 up 108 points right now. Everything bouncing back. There's calm in, there is calm in the markets. Now, I have to talk to you about something other than Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. There's plenty of other news out there, and this is pretty big. It appears at this point we have enough evidence to note there are terrorists inside the United States who crossed the southern border illegally, were processed in many cases, and allowed into the country. In fact, we now have enough data to know that there are terrorists who came into this country, or at least people on the terror watch lists, who used the app that the Biden-Harris administration came up with to allow people to process into the country. It's bizarre. So the Biden-Harris administration release of potential terrorists in the United States has revealed systemic issues across multiple agencies of the U.S. government. This is from the House Judiciary Committee. So one example, in February of 2024, authorities arrested Mohammed Karwan, an Afghan migrant on the terror watch list, after he spent nearly a year inside the United States following his release by Customs and Border Patrol in March of 2023. He was released again in March of 2024 by an immigration judge who was not told he was a national security threat, despite his membership in Hezb-e-Islami, a political and paramilitary organization the U.S. has designated a terrorist organization. The Department of Homeland Security did not tell the judge that information. So Immigrations and Customs were ordered to release him on March 30th, 2024, after he posted a $12,000 bond mandated by the immigration judge. He was rearrested only after media reports surfaced about the case, and he now remains in ICE custody. Now, what's so interesting is one reporter and political advocate for immigration says the report is chock full of fact-free innuendo. For example, they claim one guy is a dangerous terrorist based on nothing more than an accusation of his affiliation in a group. Well, that's no just ordinary group. Hezb-e-Islami killed two U.S. soldiers and 4 U.S. contractors, as well as Afghan civilians and children in Kabul. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, in fact, on a briefing call, Bill Malugin reports, said he was actually very bad news, and Department of Homeland Security opposed his release by the immigration judge, but the judge did not know the national security information. Otherwise, he would have stayed in prison. Of the 8 Tajik nationals with potential ISIS ties that Immigrations and Customs Enforcement arrested in June of 2024, 3 were released into the country using the Biden-Harris administration's CBP-1 phone application to schedule an appointment at a port of entry. 4 were initially encountered by Border Patrol while crossing the border. 1 arrived at a port of entry without scheduling a CBP-1 app appointment. Just last year, however, Secretary Mayorkas boasted about the vetting capabilities through the app, claiming the app, quote, allow DHS to screen and vet individuals before they arrive at our border. And yet, Despite these individuals, they literally went on the Biden-Harris administration portal. They filled out the application for an appointment and were released into the country. 3 of the 8 people from Tajikistan with ties to ISIS, who we've now arrested, 3 of them actually came across the border illegally, had their appointment interviews, and were released into the country. That's just wild. Now, this is from the House Judiciary Committee. So far during fiscal year 2024, the Border Patrol has encountered tens of thousands of illegal aliens nationwide from countries that could present national security risks, including 2,134 Afghan nationals, 33,347 Chinese nationals, 541 Iranian nationals, 520 Syrian nationals, and 3,104 Uzbek nationals. Of the 8 Tajik nationals with potential ISIS ties that ICE arrested, 3 of them, as I said, used the Biden-Harris administration CPB-1 app to schedule interviews. ICE officials have revealed to the Judiciary Committee that officers encountered members and affiliates of terrorist organizations, with one senior ICE official admitting the Biden-Harris border crisis has made it more difficult for officers to arrest national security threats. If a national security threat recently crossed the border, ICE says it finds it very difficult to locate the illegal alien in the U.S., given the alien's lack of digital footprint in the country. Immigration judges granted bond to at least 27 aliens on the terror watch list who were encountered between ports of entry at the southwest border between fiscal year 2021 and 2023. Additionally, immigration judges granted asylum to 4 who were on the watch list. Okay. Let's paint a more global picture here. This is a problem because we have a heating situation in the Middle East. The president on Monday held talks in the Situation Room about an Iranian counterattack on Israel. Anthony Blinken, the idiot Secretary of State, is doing everything he can to stop war from spreading, which probably means it will spread because he's an idiot. The president called King Abdullah of Jordan, helped track down Iranian drones and missiles back in April. You've got Blinken calling Qatar and Egypt intermediaries in this war with Israel and Hamas. You've got Israel assassinating as many people as they possibly can as quickly as possible before Kamala Harris potentially takes office. U.S. personnel were injured in rocket attacks at a base in Iraq that was conducted by Iranian affiliates. Notice, in all of the national news, literally, American service members came under attack, at least one of whom was critically injured, and the national media would rather focus on the folksy moderate from Minnesota, Tim Walz. An attack is probably coming in the Middle East. And we've probably got sleeper cells here. It's not comfortable to talk about. It's not fun to talk about. But it's also not idle speculation. The data is staring us in the face. Remember, a while back, there was a story, it was in Foreign Affairs magazine, a former member of the military, a former leader in the CIA saying we've got a real problem with an unsecured border. The military, the FBI, the CIA are all saying we've got to do something about our border, that terrorists are plotting in the shadows, and the border is a massive vulnerability. And the Biden administration hasn't been doing anything. And now you've got ICE agents coming forward saying it's almost impossible to find these people once they get into the country because they don't have a digital footprint. We can't find them. The clock is ticking. These are dangerous times. Around the world and here at home. If you subscribe to my morning email, you can text data to 33777. There's a free version, there's a paid version. The free version, you get the morning piece. The paid version, you get all the other stuff. Get discounts to the conferences and stuff like that. And you get a discount on the subscription, but nonetheless, everybody can see my morning piece. I went back to the Reagan administration and I pulled pictures from the Situation Room. In the White House, there's a secure room where presidents and their advisors go. They have secure feeds and links to various parts of the world, various command centers. They can get people on the phone. They've got stable communications that isn't going to be intercepted by enemies. The Situation Room. And I pulled pictures from Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and also Joe Biden. And what you'll notice in every one of these situations, there are nameplates that says who the person is. And just like you would do anywhere else at a conference table, the nameplate is in front of you, facing away from you. Except in Joe Biden's Situation Room. They all run across the table facing the president so that he knows the names of the people around the table. I put up a picture of Ronald Reagan because, Ronald Reagan was accused of having memory issues when he was president and ultimately got Alzheimer's. It wasn't true when he was in the White House. People who worked with him till the very end said he was fine. You can listen to a speech of Ronald Reagan given at the end of his term off the cuff, and it's fine. It's not rambling like Joe Biden does. Ronald Reagan doesn't have the nameplates facing him. He knows the people around the table. Barack Obama did. George Bush did. But with Joe Biden, they've all got to be so Joe Biden can see who they are, see who's at the table with him. It's a warning sign to me that he's got to have the nameplates like that to be able to call on the people that he himself picked. There's a nameplate for Kamala Harris that faces Joe Biden, for Anthony Blinken, for the Secretary of Defense, for all of these people around the table. It's actually a quite bizarre scene. You've got Vice President Harris. You got one for Admiral Grady. You've got one for Director Haynes of the CIA. You got one for Director Burns, Secretary Blinken. It's Jake Sullivan. It's remarkable that Joe Biden doesn't know who's at the table with him without nameplates. Reagan didn't need that. Neither Bush needed that. Clinton didn't need it. Obama didn't need it. Trump didn't need it. But Joe Biden does. He's calling the shots in a Situation Room where he's so out of touch at this point mentally, he doesn't know who's in the room with him without a nameplate to remind him of their names. Meanwhile, you have people crossing the border illegally. ICE is saying once they get in, they lose track of them because they don't have digital footprints. We can't find them through their social media and through what they're doing online. They're just here. We know they're here. And by the way, that's not the gotaways. These are the gotchas. These are the ones we found. If we've found this many, how many got away? How many were able to cross undetected? How many are here that we don't know about? There are thousands of people in this country who got away from Customs and Border Patrol agents, from ICE agents, who we know are in this country illegally, but we don't know who they are or where they are because they went undetected. We just know they crossed. We found signs of people crossing, and we don't know who they are. We know they're illegal. Are they terrorists? We don't know. 33,000 plus Chinese men roaming this country illegally. Iranians, Syrians, Uzbeks, Mauritanians, people from countries that are suspect, people on the terror watch list. We've been invaded under the Biden administration. We've been invaded. And now you've got a vice presidential pick from Kamala Harris and Kamala Harris herself who says, this is all a scare scenario. It's not real. There's no proof of terrorists being here. Meanwhile, we've gotten terrorists who have come into this country. We've caught them being illegal, and yet they still deny it's happening, even though Border Patrol says, yeah, it is happening. Here are the names of the people we've caught. They're on the watch list. This isn't going to end well. It's not going to end well. We should all be worried about this. Of course, the media, they don't want to talk about it. It might make Kamala Harris look bad. AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry. Everybody's talking about it. Billions of dollars invested. So buckle up. The problem is AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, Databricks, Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson, oracle.com/Erickson. Go check them out today. Wow, the anti-Semites are taking a victory lap. There's an Instagram account called Dear White Staffers. It's run by a staffer from Summer Lee, who is a congresswoman from Pennsylvania. It has become one of the most anti-Israel platforms in Washington. Despite being run by a staffer for a Pennsylvania congresswoman, is taking a victory lap over Kamala Harris rejecting a Jewish vice presidential candidate. You know, I got to say, to his credit, Chuck Schumer dinged me. I said, no Jews allowed at the top of the Democratic Party. And he replied, oh, someone should have told me, you know, he's Jewish. That's very well played. But she rejected a vice presidential pick because the anti-Semites were upset. I mean, you can't deny, you may want to deny it. Even Van Jones on CNN recognizes that, yes, in fact, she rejected Josh Shapiro because the anti-Semites wouldn't have it. And so going back to Tim Walz and his radicalism, he picked a running mate to be his lieutenant governor, and they're all in on the trans agenda. Listen to this. This is Lieutenant Governor Tim Walz's pick for lieutenant governor, wearing a shirt that says protect over a knife and a trans kids button.
Because let's be clear, this is life-affirming and life-saving healthcare. When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them.
I just gotta say, if my child told me he was a pirate, I would not chop off his hand and put on a hook and pull out his eye and put on a patch. If my child told me he was the King of England, I would not bow to him and put a crown on him. This idea that when our children tell us who they are, our job as parents is to support them. No, the hell it isn't. It is absolutely not. Our kids are kids. They don't necessarily know what they want. And the fact that you would do this, your child wants to chop off a body part and be permanently disfigured, and you're like, oh, I guess I got to because the kid wants it. In Minnesota, that's the law, and your kid will get taken away from you now under Tim Walz's administration if you don't go along with the insanity. This isn't weird. It's insane. Fighting back against all this is Americans for Prosperity. They're the nation's largest and leading grassroots organization around the country, including Minnesota. They have chapters of conservatives standing up, reminding people of the tried and the true and what works, from school choice to parental rights to deregulation to fostering small businesses to securing the border. They have the policy positions that you can get yourself educated on. Find out what those positions are, learn how to talk to your neighbors about them, educate your neighbors, learn how to go to local government and state government, educate your state and local government as well. They would love to have you involved at americansforprosperity.org. americansforprosperity.org. You can go sign up, learn to be a great conservative activist, learn to be an effective advocate for what you believe, and learn to make inroads with your community and persuade your neighbors to support the policies that conservatives care about. Americansforprosperity.org. Americansforprosperity.org. Go check them out today. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. Across the nation, the phone number is 877-973-7425. If you're just tuning in and you haven't heard the story, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who's now the Democrats' vice presidential pick, he had a career in the Army. He retired. And after September 11th, 2001, Tim Walz decided to re-enlist. The moment the Army told him he and his men would be sent to Iraq, Walz retired. J.D. Vance actually went to active duty combat. Walz, when told he was going to Iraq, decided to retire again and not go, instead run for politics. There are Democrats, when I pointed this out, who said, well, you know, Donald Trump dodged the draft in Vietnam. We all just saw Donald Trump a month ago take a bullet. What do you think matters more? Trump stood on a stage and took a bullet and stood up and told people to fight. Tim Walz, when told to fight, said, I think I'll go run for office instead. Clarifying. Not only is that clarifying, Steve Korniak, during the election in Minnesota, showing just how progressive Walz is. He's not a pick that actually woos moderates and rural and ex-urban voters to the Democratic Party. Just follow along with Korniak here.
Now, here's the key, because this county, Democrats used to be much more competitive in. Look at this. In 2012, Barack Obama won 43% of the vote in this county. It was only a little bit more than 10 points that he lost to Romney by here. The floor fell out for Democrats here when Trump came along in that Clinton race in 2016, and they haven't recovered it since. And that Walz performance here, it's a little less than Biden's number. It's more than Clinton's, and it's a far cry from what Obama was doing here. And again, I'm showing you one. This is a stand-in for dozens of counties in Minnesota where you saw the same thing, with large rural populations, blue-collar white populations, where Obama, and some of them he was winning, others he was holding his own just a dozen years ago. This is where Democrats have lost ground. And Walz in 2022, he didn't gain any ground that the Democrats had lost. He didn't do that here. He didn't do that in other counties. Walz really owes his victory, that that margin he got 8 points there statewide, he owes it to the Twin Cities area here, the area where Democrats in Minnesota and all these other states are already doing well. It's sort of the standard Democratic victory model in a state like this. It got Walz in 2022. This is the biggest county in the state. This is where Minneapolis is. Hennepin County. Walz wins this by 44 points. Look at all the votes that came out of their total. It's huge. And again, that's right in line with what Joe Biden did in 2020 when he won Minnesota. And again, just wind the clock back here. 12 years ago, this was still a blue county, but less blue. So it's the suburban areas, the metropolitan areas that have gotten much more blue, and Walz performed just like Biden did, better than Clinton did in places like this. And then in the rest of greater Minnesota, small town Minnesota, where the Democrats have been losing ground, Walz performed basically just like Biden did as well. So look at his electoral history. Tim Walz is in 2022, and the idea that he's got this automatic appeal with these small town areas in those three key battleground states, you don't see it in what he actually did on the ballot in 2022. Now,
that's a very key point here. You don't see that in Minnesota. In small town and ex-urban areas, Tim Walz actually underperformed Obama. He tied or underperformed Biden in those areas. If you got some sort of swing state appeal, and now let me, as an owner of the Green Bay Packers, yes, I own the Green Bay Packers. In fact, I've got my father's will here that I'm reviewing from my father, and make sure that between my sisters and me, I'm the one who gets his shares in the Green Bay Packers. I bought them for him for Christmas. If you really think that the governor of Minnesota is going to help you in neighboring Wisconsin, you don't necessarily understand the rivalry of those states. Also, Minnesotans don't necessarily have a great track record at the national political level. Ask Walter Mondale or Hubert Humphrey for that matter. Boy, this is getting bungled by the Harris campaign if the Trump campaign can seize on this. So Walz performs very well in progressive enclaves. And, it's like Illinois. The overwhelming majority of Illinois is conservative, but the population density of Chicago is so much that like 40% of the people in the state live in Chicago, and they all vote Democrat, and the result is a state that tends to lean very, very Democrat. Then you've got in Minnesota, you got Minneapolis and St. Paul, you got Rochester and you got St. Cloud. Those areas tend to be disproportionately where the population is and tends to be dominantly progressive. The rest of the state, not so much, but the rest of the state is outvoted by those progressive enclaves. So Tim Walski caters to those progressive enclaves. So he's not actually a guy who knows how to reach out to the suburban, exurban, rural voters. He doesn't know how. He doesn't do that well. And there's so much baggage there about this guy, from his handling of the riots in Minneapolis to his wife saying very Marie Antoinette like they left the window open so they could smell the tires burning. Good Lord. To the trans agenda, to abortion. Tim Walz did not just sign legislation to make abortion a fundamental right. Tim Walz actually signed legislation that makes it legal, not illegal, but makes it legal for a man to coerce a woman into an abortion. It used to be against the law for a man to pressure a woman into having an abortion in Minnesota. It is now no longer against the law. If you get a woman pregnant, you can bully and pressure into having an abortion, and it is no longer against the law in Minnesota, thanks to Tim Walz and the legislation he signed. He's for open borders. He believes in sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. This is who the Democrats picked. And by the way, not Jewish. They didn't want a Jew as the running mate for Kamala Harris because progressives didn't want to have a Jewish man on the ticket. This is where we are. You've got a very radical ticket. By the way, for those of you in MAGA, if you can't beat Kamala Harris, you're not a viable option to save the country. Instead of complaining about me, who is willing to put my money where my mouth is to get Donald Trump elected, you need to beat Kamala Harris. You need to get your man, Donald Trump, to beat Kamala Harris, to focus not on people like Brian Kemp or Bill Lee, but to focus on Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. If MAGA can't beat this, I'm sure you'll all say it was stolen, which then raises the question of why renominate a guy who got it stolen the last time when now he's not even in power. If MAGA can't stop Harris, well, they can't stop anything. They're certainly not saving the country. Don't be mad at me for saying that. Get focused. If I can give Donald Trump money, those of you in MAGA, well, I guess you can too. That's where we are. This is the ticket. This is a gift to the Republicans if they can capitalize on it. It is an absolute gift to the GOP if they can capitalize on this. Now, to the phones. I want to go to Sheila. Welcome to the show, Sheila. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for being patient.
Hi, I just wanted to say, yes, I was disappointed in that rally in Atlanta. My heart sank. I was trying to turn off the TV, but I was like, nope, he's going to turn it around. He's going to turn it around. He just didn't, and my heart just sank. But I just wanted to say that I'm still going to vote for him, though, because of his policies. I just wanted to say, though, that the weird comments aren't landing the way y'all think they are. They're not landing. So, I mean, of all the adjectives we can use, how about incompetent? How about that? Because there are plenty of adjectives you can use, but incompetence sums it all up, from the economic policies to where, groceries and everything else is unaffordable due to what they like to say, Bidenomics. That's incompetent.
Right.
To the foreign policy, which you're playing footsies with Hamas, that's incompetent. From the domestic policies, from y'all not securing the border, y'all can't even secure the president. So I know y'all can't secure the border. Incompetent. So everything that has to do with them, and now you can add this Waltz guy into the picture of letting his own state burn, incompetent. They're incompetent. So the weird stuff, it was funny at first, but it's just not landing the way y'all think it is. And it's almost like playgroundish, like we have too many serious things going on. If you're weird, you're weird. No, you're incompetent.
Look, I agree with you. And to be fair, it was the Democrats tried to throw the weird stuff at Trump and Vance, and so they're throwing it back at him with Walls record. But you're right. It's incompetence. It's opportunistic and incompetence. These are people who are desperate for power and are too incompetent when they get there to keep power. You're absolutely right on this. And I certainly hope that the Trump team will listen and focus on the incompetence of this. I mean, this is a man, Tim Walz in Minnesota, this is a man who decided that if you were a BIPOC, only white people, by the way, say BIPOC, black, indigenous people of color, that if you were BIPOC, you had a better shot at getting COVID than if you had hypertension, even though we know that COVID was more fatal to people with hypertension. But to do stuff like this. And then you got Kamala Harris. You're absolutely right. She's absolutely incompetent. And they've both, Walz and Harris, have participated in the cover-up of Joe Biden. They have participated in covering up the condition of Joe Biden. Y'all, I wish you would go, if you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, text it to 33777. That very first link is my daily newsletter. I wish you would just click through that because anybody can get it. You go down to the third story, Joe Biden really isn't fit to serve. And it's a photo of Joe Biden in the Situation Room with the nameplates of everyone in the room facing him so he knows who they are. He picked these people and does not know who they are. It's remarkable. This is the president of the United States. He's that far out to lunch now. And a month ago, both Tim Walz and Kamala Harris were at the White House vouching for Joe Biden and his mental fitness for office. Just a month ago, they were both lying to Americans about how competent Joe Biden is. And by the way, majority of Americans, according to the polling out there right now, majority of Americans hold it against the people who lied about Joe Biden's competence. That includes Harris and Walz. And that's another angle for the Trump campaign. There are so many angles for the Trump campaign to go after this pick. There are so many angles. And I got to say, as divided as the Republicans have been in the last 2 weeks, particularly after the Trump rally in Atlanta on Saturday, this is a great way for the Republicans to find some unity in going after this very progressive ticket of incompetent people who think that somehow they have a vision to sell America. Kamala Harris had to avoid picking a Jewish man to placate the far left in the Democratic Party. Tells you everything you need to know about the situation we're in right now. Amazing. Now, speaking of amazing, Vision Computers is amazing. If you call them at 404-COMPUTER, go to visioncomputers.com. They can build a computer for you. But more importantly, they can also be your tech support. If you got a kid going back to school, you need them to build a computer, they'll save you money and give your kid a great computer, and then they'll be your kid's tech support. So if they're off at college, 15 seconds or less, they get the answer to what's going on with their computer so they can be a great college student, not have to worry about tech support. If you run a business and you can't afford the in-house IT guy, Vision Computers can be your IT solution so your employees can be hyper-productive at their job, not at keeping their computer going. You don't even have to have bought a computer from Vision Computers. For $179 a year per computer, they will be your tech support solution. So instead of paying the in-house IT guy a whole lot of money, your employees get a phone number. They call 15 seconds or less. They got a problem. They got a question. Vision takes care of them. 404-COMPUTE. If you tell them I sent you, you save even more money. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Any one of you in the United States of America for your home or your office can use Vision Computers to be your tech support solution. Visioncomputers.com or 404-COMPUTE. Tell them I sent you. Welcome. Delighted to have you with me across the nation. It's too late for you to call in now. Chad Wolf was the border czar for Donald Trump. Unlike Kamala Harris as the border czar, Chad Wolf was actually competent at Department of Homeland Security. He was on Fox News talking about the border situation.
Secretary Chad Wolf. Chad, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning.
You know, it's one thing, we've all been watching the migrant crisis. It's one thing if they're migrants, but I think a red line is if they are terrorists, potentially. And that's one of the problems. The way things are set up, the migration or immigration judges at our southern border, you know, they don't have access to the intelligence that tells people, okay, this is a terrorist, so don't let him in?
Well, that's exactly right. Look, every day, CBP and ICE law enforcement officials have a very difficult job. They're looking for that needle in a haystack. They're looking for those national security threats coming across that border. And what the Biden administration has done over this last 3.5 years with allowing 10 million illegal crossings and another 370 known or suspected terrorists coming across that border is that they've made that haystack essentially into a barn of hay. And CBP and ICE law enforcement officials have even a more difficult job. But when they do catch them, when they do identify them, what's occurring, release into the United States, it's unthinkable. Whether they're being released on that through the CBP One app, they're given asylum protections. Just think about that. An individual on that terrorist screening database is giving asylum protections by the U.S. government. And to your point, they're doing that from immigration judges that don't have security clearances to see the classified material. So this idea that the administration has told the American people that they're properly vetting, they're properly screening, and that all national security threats are being detained simply isn't the case.
There you go. I mean, that's an actual expert who knows what he's talking about on this issue. It's just kind of wild that this is happening. But you know what's the bigger issue for the Biden administration? You know the thing that they're focused on instead of securing the border? This.
But are currently tied with China for the most golds as we enter the home stretch of these games.
That should have been trimmed better. My fault.
And among all the world's problems right now, we have a bunch of them, don't we? The Biden administration is banning plastic cutlery from the federal government. The plan to target pollution will prohibit the use of single-use plastics across all federal departments. The White House writing this: the president is committed to taking ambitious actions to end plastic pollution and is calling upon the global community to do the same.
Now, what's so funny about this? You know, the show Veep is like rising in popularity as Kamala Harris runs for president. Veep is a more accurate reflection of the world of politics in Washington than anything else. And the very first episode of the series Veep is about the vice president of the United States' effort to get rid of plastic cutlery in the federal government. That literally, that is the very first episode of this comedy about the absurdities of Washington, D.C. The very first episode is about getting rid of plastic utensils. And they are literally becoming an episode of Veep. This White House is. They don't care. My goodness, these people, they're that out to lunch. Holy cow. The Tim Wall stuff. Again, if you haven't subscribed, you should text Eric to 33777 and click that top link, subscribe, because we will push out everything this morning, all the videos about Tim Wall, so you have them. You can share with your friends. I cannot believe I can believe she didn't pick Josh Shapiro. She should have. This now gives Republicans an opening. Republican consultants super excited by today.